before we start this podcast, Hash fucked up the editing for it, so I spent hours editing it, so the audio is good. Because of this, subscribe. Less than 50% of you have got subscribed, as here, and it would help us out a lot. We want to get to 10k this year, so yeah, enjoy the podcast.
Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This one will be up on a Tuesday, which is weird, I know, because we call it Tuesdays, but it's usually up on like Wednesdays. And this episode is very special because we have two guests. I think for the first time. No, wait, actually we had one with Pack and Raf, but again, we have two guests this time. So I'm joined by Cormac. Cormac, say hi.
Hi everyone, you know me.
And then I'm also joined by two guests. Josh, you go first. Chris, you go second. Introduce yourselves and say hi.
Hi everyone. My name's Joshua Schmidt, and I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh for 15 years at this point or something. So and I've done pretty well in the past. So I guess some of you might know me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm Christian Thomas. I'm a member of Luxury Gaming. And yeah, I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh since, I think, beginning of 2016, end of 2015, and I'm also glad to be here.
Yep, so today's episode, we will be going through Master Duel mostly because honestly, I think the four of us just haven't touched the TCG in like 5 months or something. Josh hasn't touched it in 2 years, but that's a different conversation. But yeah, we wanted to talk about Master Duel because we have a tournament that we're playing actually like a couple of hours after recording this podcast. And we also figured that we can go through the format because we haven't really talked about the format that much. So yeah, let's go. What do you guys think about the format?
Yeah, I mean, so from the tournaments that we've seen so far up to this stage, you look at the most dominant decks that are being played. I think Tri Brigade has kind of cemented itself as being like the most popular deck within the format. I feel like pretty much every single tournament, maybe after like the first couple of days, it's been the most popular deck. I don't know if anybody else has noticed something different. Like there's been like a bit of I feel like Virtual World kind of started off big and it's still there, it's still prevalent. But it's like Tri Brigade, Drytron. It felt like a lot of like the summer 2021 TCG format actually. Like those sort of decks are kind of the most popular things at the moment. Those are the main things that are being like the takeaways for me. I don't know if anything is popping up for you, anything you've noticed interesting. That's maybe developed over the course of time with Master Duel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Tri is the most popular deck, and I think most people think it's the best deck, right? Pretty sure.
Yeah. I think most do.
Why is it the best
Funny
deck,
that
Josh?
3 people here would disagree with that statement.
Why is it the best deck, Josh?
I'm not actually sure if it is the best deck. The problem that I have personally is that I haven't been able to play every single deck to an extent that I would like to in order to judge how good they are, simply because of how you have to get all the cards first. Personally, Tri Brigade was one of the first decks that I built simply because it was very accessible, because I think most of its cards are in one of the like promoted packs at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Charade and stuff like that, and that pack is like pretty solid overall, so I just got a bunch of it at the beginning. And for me personally, I know you guys all played these decks like a year ago already.
Yes.
For me, every single thing was new, right? Because I haven't played the format. So first of all, Tri Brigade wasn't as boring as it is to some other people at this point for me, and I personally like it. I think it's a good deck. I'm not sure if it's the best, but it's definitely very consistent. And one big deal about it is that it doesn't lose to Maxi as hard as some other decks, because like Maxi is like the elephant in the room, right? When we're talking about the main difference between this format and the TCG format at the time, from when the card pool was round about the same. And I feel like other decks like Drytron and Virtual World, which are really good, take a bigger hit from Maxi than Tri Brigade does.
Yeah, I would go as far as to say that like Tri doesn't play through Maxi, it just beats Maxi straight up, like just beats the card. I think it's very good.
The good hands don't even care, right? Where
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're gonna get one draw, and I'm gonna pass on something that's a little bit worse than what I would have done, but it's not like Maxi beats my deck. But yeah, I mean, I know Chris doesn't think Tri-Brigade's the best deck, and I'd be curious to know why you don't think Maxi is a problem for. I think you think Virtual World's the best deck.
Yeah, so I mean, I think Virtual is slightly better than Try. I do think Try is pretty good as well, and depending on how the format develops, like if there's more combo decks, then I can also see myself playing Tri Brigade, because obviously playing combo mirrors is not really amazing because you don't really have an edge there. But I do think Virtual is a bit better at the moment. I think part of it is that it's the best combo deck into Maxi, because unlike other combo decks, you can main Gamma pretty well, and that's just a Maxi out whenever you start with a Virtual Spell and Trap and reveal a name there, because they're gonna Maxi you, and then you have Gamma as an out. And then the other edge Virtual has over other combo decks is that you can summon a VFD in 5 do in 5, but the end of VFD doesn't matter because you put them on better draw another hand trip in those 5 draws, because otherwise you're still gonna VFD them and then they're still gonna lose. So I also think it's the best combo deck into Maxi. And then another issue I had with Try is that I think the tournament meta is pretty diverse. So there's a lot of different types of combo decks. There's like decks like Drytron or Virtual, where cards like Bell, Skullmeister are pretty good because they're more like graveyard reliant combo decks. But then there's also Adamantipator or like Tri-Brigade Lyrilusk, where you want more cards like Veil or Imperm, because cards like Veil and Meister are not great against those decks. So that I think is kind of weird for a deck like Try as well, because it's kind of hard to play the right decks in the main deck, because yeah, you can either play graveyard hand traps, but then you will lose some percentages against, I mean, those combo decks that I mentioned, but also the mirror match, because I don't think the graveyard hand traps are great there either. And that's why I felt like playing a super solid combo deck like Virtual is the better choice at the moment.
Understandable. I just want to say one thing. You said you're not playing that many combo mirrors. What are you playing against? Everything in Master Duel is just combo mirrors. What do you mean?
No, I'm playing against a lot of Tries and Eldritch as well. And I think the Eldritch matchup is pretty good for Virtual.
Yeah, okay.
Also because you have an you have an in-engine out with Juche versus Skilled End, right? So that's something other decks don't have. And I think if you go first, you're pretty favored, because like you end your turn with a lot of resources, and then Shen is also just a great card against Eldritch. So that's something that I also liked. But yeah, there are quite some combo mirrors, I have to say that. And if it gets more, I'm likely to also play Tri-Brigade, but at the moment I think the meta game is still in a state where I think playing Virtual yourself is fine.
You think your decision changes based on whether or not you play best of 3 or best of 1? Or do you still play the same deck?
No,
Okay.
it definitely changes, because Virtual, as many people know, is like not the most consistent deck. So there are definitely some games where you just brick. And I mean, when you brick once in best of 1, it just means that you immediately lose the round. That's something that can't happen in best of 3, because if you're convinced that Virtual is the best deck and that whenever you get to play, you have a solid chance at winning the games, then I think it's fine to brick like in one of the matches, because you still have 2 other games to win. That's why I think for best of 3, it's definitely a different approach that I would take compared to best of 1s.
Yeah, because I think Try becomes better in best of 3, right? I don't know if you guys agree with this. No?
No.
No.
Combo decks get better in best of 3.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you're less likely to get maxied in multiple games. You reduce variance.
Yeah, but Try is also more likely to like draw hand traps in best of 3 than best of 1.
Yeah, but no, like what do you mean? They're
Like-
not more likely to draw.
Nah, because you have 3 chances to stop combo decks instead of 1 chance, which is better, right?
Depends what you need to stop them.
I think another issue with trying best of 1 is that Eldritch is also more popular, because Eldritch usually gets recap post side, right? Because people have all the anti-spell trap cards in their decks, whereas in best of 1s, not everyone mains Storms. But I did see some trialists maining Storm and Feather Dust in best of 1, and I mean, maybe you need to do that against Eldritch, but that's also just not ideal, right? Because maining those cards just aren't really great against like pretty much every combo deck in the meta. So I think when a control deck like Tri-Brigade has to main those cards in order to win against Eldlich, then I also think that's something that makes Tri-Brigade worse. Because, for example, in combo decks, I don't feel like you need to main Storm and Feather Duster because your engine is just so good that you do have a chance at playing through all the back rows going second. Tri-Brigade doesn't have that edge because you usually only have 2 plays, so you need to main some removal in order to account for Eldlich in best of run, and that I think is also a disadvantage in my opinion.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. What about Cormac Go? You want to say something?
Yeah, it was just the things that were coming to mind where, when you're mentioning how like there's differences that you're obviously going to have to apply to your deck building between like best of 1 and best of 3. That obviously leads to like some sort of like funky things. Like I think we like noticed in like I think a lot of the OCG YCSs that they put on, they're usually best of 1s, and we usually see like these weird decks that are put on like Cyber Dragon and stuff like that. Not because they're not inherently better than like the combo decks or decks like these like Tri-Brigade sort of mid-range sort of things, but just the fact that they're not having to sort of water down their deck with like certain non-engine cards or play cards that they generally wouldn't want to be playing in order to give themselves chances against all the random things you can come up against in a best of 1 format, right? So it's kind of like when you're having to do that sort of thing with a mid-range deck in particular like Tri-Brigade, where usually in a lot of matchups like whatever you're getting from your engine is decent, but the extra like non-engine cards that you're getting in your hand are quite impactful on your win rate. They then sort of have a little bit of a hindrance to your chances of winning. But at the same time, there's also things we were saying like how combo decks they only need to like get sacked once, have like someone draw maxi or someone just have the out to whatever they're trying to do, or them just bricking once. So there's like these things where you take into account when you do best of 3 versus best of 1, and I guess like when you're then looking at that from a tournament perspective, like you kind of have to like recognize, all right, okay, when I'm going into this like tournament, like I think a lot of the early tournaments and maybe some of the smaller ones have been best of 1s, and then you have to recognize that you can't apply the same logic over to your best of 3 tournaments, which is something that I'm interested in when we start having maybe slightly bigger size tournaments. Like if Konami start putting on like equivalents of YCS as their Master Duel, what their sort of plan is going to be. Will they be doing best of 1s, best of 3s, or would they be doing like a mix of each? And then seeing how people address each of the formats differently individually, I guess.
It'll definitely be best of 1, by the way. I'm just telling you from now. It'll definitely be best of 1.
Yeah.
It's going to be so sad. It's going to be so sad.
But yeah.
No, I don't think it's bad. I think it's worse than best of 3, though. I don't think it's bad. I think best of 3 is better.
It depends on what they'll do, right? They might just do a best of 3, but you have to play like 3 best of 1s with different decks and stuff like that.
Sure, yeah.
Which is it's a best of 3, but different decks, just no side deck. I think the main thing that goes missing is the side deck portion. Because I think in bigger tournaments, maybe the qualifiers will be best of 1, or maybe you'll have to ladder for a high spot finish, like in Duel Links, right? Which is obviously not that great. But for big tournament structures, I don't think we'll ever play a high competitive game where there's only going to be one game deciding who wins the match.
No, that's for sure, yeah. That's for sure.
And so then the only thing we have to talk about is no side deck good? Do we think that's good? And then like how do we handle the different deck situation, right?
I think no side deck is manageable. Like it's not the best thing ever, but it's manageable, which is fine. And I'm pretty sure that's how it's going to be, because like if you check Master Duel, you can go through the entire thing and there is like not a single mention of what a side deck is. It's actually so scary. Like they actually basically like pretend that the side deck doesn't exist even. It's so funny. So I think these kind of tournaments will be something similar to just like bringing 3 decks and then like trying to win in a best of 3 series with the 3 decks. I don't know the specific formatting, but something like that.
I think probably a lot of TCG players will think that best of 1 is bad at first, but I think that's probably also because they're so used to playing best of 3, right? Because people who have been playing TCG for like 5, 6, 7 years, they only know best of 3 and they have only played with a side deck. So I think it will take some time to get used to that. I mean, also personally, I'm also someone who probably needs to take some time to get used to this format, but I don't really think it's necessarily bad, because like Joshua mentioned, there's certainly ways to make best of 1 consistent, like Konami has also done with Duel Links. I think in the World Championship, for example, they used the format where you are allowed to only play one deck, and then I think you can also use the same card only in one deck or something like that, and then you just play like with your
Chris? Oh no.
kind of a best of 3 just without a side. I think it's just different, but not.
Chris?
I think we get this is what he's doing, which is like one thing about. I don't know if he's still gonna be speaking when he comes back. I'll go come in there for anyway, and if he starts speaking again, I'll let him go. But just that, I think something that for a lot of TCG players, when Master Duel first dropped, they were a bit taken aback by the fact that it wasn't just essentially a carbon copy of what the TCG was, and that there were going to be differences. And I think once you kind of like recognize that, like this is its own entity essentially, and it's going to have its own structures and it's going to have its own way of playing, then it makes it more understandable. Like this isn't just going to be like you have played TCG, you know exactly like how the structure is going to be. This is going to be exactly the way that you know it. Like it's the same cards, obviously, but at the end of the day, there's different things that you have to take into account. Which, to be honest, like for myself anyway, I find that to be kind of exciting, because if it was just the same thing sort of ported over,
It would be quite boring. Quite boring.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly, yeah.
Like, imagine if we had like current TCG format in Master Duel. I would be dead. I would just not be playing Yu-Gi-Oh. Current format is so bad.
It's a nice thing to like.
We could have also just had a bad Master Duel format, right? And TCG could have just been much better, and everyone could be.
Yeah. That's how it's going to be. Like the plan is right. Hopefully,
right?
by the time current TCG format is in Master Duel, hopefully the TCG format is good enough for me to not play Master Duel, so I can play the TCG instead, and I'll just keep alternating. Because keeping up with like 2 different forms of Yu-Gi-Oh at the same time is not easy if you want to do it at like a hyper competitive level. It's very time consuming.
That's my only complaint with Master Duel. I think the only thing that they didn't do very well is manage expectations, right? Because I feel like a lot of people just expected something different in the first couple of days when it released. Because I saw everyone, and I was under the impression that it was just going to be finally a solid simulator for TCG and OCG, right? So what I expected was we get there, we have the same card pool, we can just go on ladder and then toggle between OCG and TCG and just play Yu-Gi-Oh, right? That's what I expected. Now what they delivered is not necessarily bad, right? It's just not necessarily what everyone expected, which I think is, now having played it for a while, is totally fine, right? It's a great game. I've been having a lot of fun. It got me back into the game in general. It got me into streaming. It's really cool. But yeah, I think it's just people expected something different in the first few weeks, and now it takes a little bit of time to get used to. But now that we know that it's going to be something different, I'm happy with it. But the only thing that I think is going to be difficult for people is to actually keep up with 2 formats. If you want to play both competitively, I think it's a little bit too much, knowing with how much time I used to put into, preparing for TCG events.
Yeah.
And how much time I will probably put into preparing for Master Duel events. I think it's going to be difficult to do both at the same time, which that's a little downside of having 2 different formats. Yeah.
Was I lagging just now?
No, Chris, you were fine.
Okay. Well, yeah, sorry about that. My Wi-Fi is just shit. That's also the reason why there's no face cam.
No, it's okay.
I think is a cute term for what just happened.
Okay, so what I said was just that I think it probably will take some time for TCG players to get used to the best of 1 format, simply because they've been so used to playing best of 3. Because like most TCG players have been playing for like 5, 6, 7 years, so they're just really used to best of 3. But I don't think best of 1 is necessarily bad, and I certainly think that, like Joshua mentioned, there's definitely ways to make best of 1 more consistent. So like just playing with like multiple decks, for example, and then just don't have a side deck. And I think Konami also did that, by the way, in Duel Links at the World Championship.
Yes.
I think they used the format like that. Maybe Joshua can explain more about that, because I'm not exactly sure how that worked, but I know there has been something like that has worked well for them in the past in Duel Links.
Yeah, I think the Duel Links format was like 5 decks. I think it's 5 decks, ban 1.
I think it's 3 decks, and it's like you can only use a card for one deck, something
they
like
have
that.
they have a shared ban list basically. So if a card is like you can play 3 Ash. If you want to play 3 Ash in 3 different decks, you can only play 1 in each, or you can play 3 in one and then none in the others, which opens up a whole different world
Yeah.
of problems for TCG. Which, like, I would say this is a fine solution. It was a fine solution for Duel Links. The only thing that doesn't work for Yu-Gi-Oh, in my opinion, is that Yu-Gi-Oh has too many cards that are required in every deck, not just in 1 out of 3 decks.
Yeah.
Which is mainly hand traps. It does apply to some other cards, but mainly hand traps. And I think if they do something where, okay, you share a 3-card limit across 3 decks, I think we're gonna get ruined by combo decks, because you simply cannot put enough good hand traps.
One of your decks is just getting comboed. That's just always happening.
Or even 2, right? Because
Yeah.
if you have to, you cannot put 1 Maxi in each deck. It's not gonna work. You have to, like, I don't think I have to explain this too deeply, but I just think the density of hand traps you have in your decks is not going to be sufficient to stop a triple combo lineup. You're going to have one deck that's going to be fine into combo, the other 2 are just going to lose, which in a best of 3 means you're just always going to lose unless they break super hard one game against your deck that doesn't have hand traps.
Yeah.
And I think this would end up with people having to bring suboptimal decks or combo decks, right? And I think that can't be the goal. For a competitive format where, like, ladder, I can play my best of 1 deck fine with no limitations, and then in best of 3 everything works completely differently. That should not be the goal. On the other hand, there has to be some limitations to stop people from bringing the same exact deck 3 times, right? So we have to find, or they have to find, the middle ground. Which
That's a good point.
enjoyable.
Yeah, how do you classify like a different deck in Yu-Gi-Oh? Because there's no like
Yeah, that's
factions or
last
regions.
couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I went on. I remember I went on Coder's stream and we talked like for an hour about this, and I think he held a tournament with what we came up with as well, which was,
Yeah, it was a 2v2, right? It was a 2v2.
that was not the one. I think it was just one, like a more casual tournament that he did
okay.
on his stream, where he
Okay.
wanted to test the rule set. It was basically, I think he said, what we said was good, or what I think would be cool is something like, decks can only share a certain number of cards between each other. Like the deck 1 and deck 2 cannot have more than 20 cards in common in the main deck, for example. And
Okay.
what this would lead to would be you can either play, like, you can, for example, I took Salamangreat as an example because I think it works very well as an example here, because Salamangreat is kind of a deck that has like half engine, half tech cards, hand traps, whatever, right? Where you'd play like 20 Salamangreat cards, estimate, and then the rest of your deck would be like hand traps, potted desires, and whatnot. And with this rule, you could technically play 2 Salamangreat decks, right? Which is fine, but you have to tech them very differently, right? They'd have to be very different Salamangreat decks because of the 20 card difference, right? Which I think is sufficiently different to make them 2 separate decks overall, right? If I decide to play the same engine in 2 decks and I have to play completely different tech cards, I think that's fine. But if I don't want to play Salamangreat twice, I can play 2 different decks and then they can share the hand traps if I decide to do it that way. Right? So I have to decide if I think Salamangreat is just that sick of an engine, I want to play it.
It's not.
2 decks, right? Yeah, I know. That's his example. Yeah, I'm a boomer in that regard. If you, like, just as an example, if you want to play Salamangreat because you think it's super sick, it's your favorite deck, but then you have to actually think about how do I make 2 different Salamangreat decks work. But if you want to play like Drytron and Tri Brigade and Virtual World, you basically face no limitations because these decks don't share more than 20 cards anyways, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think you do the same for the extra deck. Maybe they can share only 5 or something, or 10, whatever. I think that would work. And another thing that I think Decade is doing for his Master Duel meta tournaments is they just classify decks, right? They have ways of classifying the decks. And they just say you cannot bring 2 of the same deck.
Yeah, they have like a database of all the archetypes, basically, right? Something like that.
Yeah, and then then currently they're searching. I think they're searching for a solution on how to handle archetypes, little engines, right? Like at which point does a deck become a Sky Striker deck, right? Because maybe you would classify Sky Striker Orcust. Can I play Sky Striker Orcust and Sky Striker in the same lineup? Is that allowed? And I think the way they are handling it currently is with a certain size of the engine. At starting at a certain size, I think the rule right now is just if the engine makes it into the title of the deck on their website, you can't play it in 2 decks.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't call if Sky Striker Orcust is called Sky Striker Orcust, it counts as a Sky Striker deck, so you can't play Sky Striker again. So you wouldn't be able to go like Shadol Invoke Dogmatica and then Shadol, I don't know what else, Artifact or whatever.
Thank God, no window. But yeah, no, I think it's very unexplored because we never had this problem in the TCG. We never had this problem anywhere before. Because I don't even think other card games have had this problem, because other card games either like were in person and then just completely got translated digitally, or they started digitally, so they already like had the infrastructure set for it. Whereas Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have that infrastructure, so we kind of need to like figure out what we need to do in terms of like having a good tournament structure that's also like playable. And to be honest, I don't know why we don't have just side decks in Master Duel. I feel like it's a good solution anyway. I really don't understand why we don't have it, but I guess.
Yeah.
I think it's just that they want to make their own game, which is like different from the TCG, similar to Duel Links. And I think in order to achieve that, there just needs to be some differences, and I think that's why they decided for that. And also, I think for ladder, I think side deck is not that good anyway, because I think the way with all the animations and stuff, I think ladder games take a lot of time anyway. So I think for ladder, a best of one system is better.
You would not get casuals to play best of 3s.
Yeah.
No, I think best of one ladder is fine. Best of one ladder is fine, I think. Yeah.
Like I wouldn't mind an option to play best of 3, but best of 1 has to be the standard for ladder.
Yeah, and I think that's fine, because even if you're trying to competitively ladder, like down the line when we have a leaderboard or whatever, hopefully, then you have an unlimited amount of games that you can play that are all best of 1. So on average, you should be fine, right? Because like
it is totally fine.
It is totally fine. It shouldn't be a problem. So yeah, I don't mind best of 1 ladder. I think that part is fine.
Yeah, like I think the idea of like when they were releasing this was that they wanted to have a Yu-Gi-Oh game that was a bit more like streamlined, so that it was like more accessible to like a wider audience, and then they'll develop like the core competitive stuff like on top of it. Like there's a ranking system, we have like all that, we have like our ladder. Hopefully we'll get like something at the top end for the competitive, but the whole thing was like they have the ladder there for now, and then they have the best of 1 so that anybody can just hop in and play with whatever deck they have. Probably also impacted a little bit by the fact that you're getting cards through blind packs with gems and stuff like that, so there's only so much of a card pool that you'll have, and then having to introduce a side deck on top of that for like the wider audience probably doesn't help them in that regard. So it's kind of a thing where like they get the base infrastructure in first, and then for like the competitive level, they'll probably find some sort of workaround, which, to be honest, with the way that they're doing it right now, probably doesn't involve the side deck. It's probably more along the lines of those sort of like multiple deck things, like you guys were saying, if I had to guess at this stage. But
yeah.
I think I wouldn't be too hopeful of a leaderboard personally, to be honest, because I think in like 4 years of Duel Links, they have never implemented such thing into that game. I think what is more likely is, and I think that has been determined, is like that we get more ranks, but a specific leaderboard I don't think will happen. I can only imagine a leaderboard happening when there's going to be some sort of KC Cups in Master Duel as well, because that was the method to qualify for Worlds in Duel Links, and I think that's kind of likely to happen in Master Duel as well, whether it's
better hope that's not our way to qualify for Worlds.
Yeah, I was about to say
whether it's a good or bad thing is like up to your own opinion. I personally also don't think that that's the best system, but I think
there's no opinion.
Yeah, but I think for a KC Cup, then there will be a leaderboard, obviously.
No, I mean,
I don't think we have that for
I'm with you.
ladder.
I'm with you. The only thing I need to say is that since day one of Master Duel, there has been a lot of stuff that has been going on that is completely different from how Konami are handling Duel Links. Like, they are being like way too responsive for Konami standards. I'll be honest. They are answering every single question we have in like one day. Like, remember when the people started like bugging the game to make you lose? They fixed that in one day. When people started self-FTKing in the Xyz event, they fixed that in one day. Like, that's crazy for Konami standards. It's actually like super surprising. So I'm not gonna be opposed to the idea that they might have something different than what they have in Duel Links. But yes, we might end up having something stupid like a KC Cup, in which case I will be super sad. Like, super, super sad. Because I think that system does not reward good players at all.
Same. I don't think it's the best way to qualify for Worlds. Definitely not.
I think there's also
قلت إني مشغول.
amazing, but the thing about it is that a lot of the games are just generally pretty quick, whereas like games in TCG or Master Duel, like even a game one can still take a significant amount of time, and when it's a sort of a system that is just kind of reliant on people just playing over and over and over and over and over again, when they're not short and snappy, then it's kind of a problem, I feel like. But maybe they'll
be under the same premise for everyone playing, but still, it's like the way it works in Duel Links is just like you have to play, like you have 3 days to play as much as you can, and it's just exhausting, and it's not a good system. But yeah, we'll just
pretty sure the players that qualify in Duel Links just don't sleep for 3 days, right? Like, just maybe.
I mean, Eugen did it once. Eugen qualified like, what was it, 2019?
Yes.
28, yeah.
And I think he slept like 4 hours the entire weekend. He was gone after.
Yeah, no, that's like, if they have to do that for TCG, it's just, or well, TCG Master Duel rather. That's just like, no.
Yeah.
None of that, because like at least with that, I mean, like the one thing with it for me is that, right? Okay, you play a game in like Duel Links, and for the most part, it's usually like 5 minutes tops at most, if even. And then, right, you win, you lose, it's over, move on to the next one. And you can just kind of like get through a bunch of them really quickly and you can build it up. Whereas with Master Duel, it's much more like, I mean, they could take like the combo decks and stuff like that. I mean, there's a good chance you probably would just surrender against a combo deck all the time just to save time, which is just like not a really efficient way of doing things. I think just the level of like the power level of the cards and stuff like that, and the length of the games just makes something like a 3-day long KC Cup just really, I would feel unfeasible, but I mean,
there are a lot of things that just make Master Duel like completely different than Duel Links, and they've handled a lot of things very differently. Like in Duel Links, you cannot craft cards, is the first thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
If we had Duel Links crafting or card collection system in Master Duel, game would already be dead.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Definitely.
I think just the fact that we have different systems here shows that that probably different people are in charge of this, and they realize that some things that may have worked in Duel Links will not work in Master Duel, which makes me hopeful for some of these things. Like, I think it's totally possible we get a ranking system at the highest rank. Like, which,
I hope so.
If you look at these things, you also have to compare them to some of the other stuff that has happened, like Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra. Both of these games, it's completely standard. Best of one ladder is completely standard. Having a ranking system at the highest rank is completely standard. And I think Master Duel is just aiming at the same ballpark, right? You're just digital card games, same market. You'll have to compare yourself to these games, and people are used to getting to a ranking system at the highest rank. I think that's, yeah.
I mean, they want to compete with these games. They have said that. Like, they keep saying that their goal for the game is to get into esports, and to do that, you're gonna have to compete with these games. So, yeah. And before,
a lot of the stuff that they did just makes sense in that regard.
yeah, as long as we don't get 7-2 tiebreaks in Master Duel, Josh.
I mean, if I can work for it on ladder, I'm fine with it.
Same, but also bad system. Anyway, different topic, different day.
Do you guys think that we will have a world championship in Master Duel this year? Or is it
We are supposed to. We are supposed to. That was like the very first announcement that they made for Master Duel.
No, I mean, we're supposed to get to the World Championship with Master Duel. I don't know. I don't remember if they announced it for this year.
They did.
I think
They did.
they did? Okay.
Yes.
First of all, that's very cool. On the other hand, I personally, I don't think we can predict whether, in general, the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship is happening this year, right? We can't know yet, because it didn't happen the last 2 years. maybe even if the TCG one doesn't happen, maybe they could make a Master Duel one work, right? Online
Yes.
Yeah.
somehow.
I think that's likely because last year I think Duel Links had a quote unquote world championship.
They didn't call it Worlds. They didn't call it Worlds.
Yeah, no, they didn't call it worlds, but like I think it was equivalent to that because
But,
it
yeah, I mean,
was
I
the
think-
same way to qualify. So yeah.
I think what we can say is if it's possible for them, I think we can expect to get it at the regular World Championship. We'll probably have a Master Duel event. If that's happening, if the real World Championship is happening.
Probably
And
won't happen.
The only question is how do you qualify? That's the most important question that like everyone is just gonna have to wait for and see if it's gonna be a good match.
They need to clarify it soon-ish, because we know that like the World Championship in Yu-Gi-Oh usually happens around August, right?
Well, you say that, but then looking back at how they gave us information about like, the world's point system, like halfway through the season every time, it's like don't expect too much here.
Yeah, they could drop it like a couple of weeks before, just out of nowhere, to be honest with you. Yeah, but I think one thing we want to see, though, just clearly from all this, like, is just see how Konami are going to structure their competitive events, and hopefully they don't wait until they have their Worlds qualifier, essentially, for that to happen. You'd hope that there's something done prior to that at least lets them gauge how many people would be like entering these sort of tournaments, because there could be even things like, you know, like how well their servers hold up with how many people could be entering this sort of things. You'd like to hope they have some sort of thing hopefully set up maybe in the next couple of months. Like I hope like within like April, May, we'd have some sort of tournament that's hosted by Konami that is like, this is like a competitive event that is being hosted by us, as like somewhat in the vein of how like their World Championship qualifier would end up being. I feel like if they hold off on that one. Yeah.
I think in an ideal world they'll host tournaments that lead to smaller tournaments. Like you qualify, like there needs to be like an open tournament for like everyone who
Stage 1, Stage 2,
highest
Stage 3.
rank or whatever, and then you get a stage higher and whatnot, and at some point in the stages it starts using the same competitive system as the World Championship is going to be. And then maybe at the end of it, for each continent, you'll have like 2 people qualifying, and you do the same thing 2 or 3 times, so that it's not always the same card pool / format. So you have like multiple chances to find like a format you prefer or you're better in, right? Where I don't want it to be like how TCG was pre-2017, where there was one tournament in a year, and if you didn't make top 4, you could just forget about Worlds, right? I feel like Worlds in every card game should be something you can somehow work towards, right? And not just have it be one singular tournament where there's just too much variance in card games, right? There needs to be some sort of point collection thing throughout an entire season, instead of just one tournament.
Yeah, that just increases the amount of variance and stuff within it. And on the point that we were saying before, how like this like Master Duel isn't like just this additional thing that like Konami are doing for Yu-Gi-Oh! Like they are very much looking to get in, like they're in the market to be alongside the likes of your Hearthstones, your Runeterras and stuff like that. For you guys like Hash and Josh in particular, who've like played like some other games like Runeterra like particular quite heavily, like is there things in those sort of games that you find that they could feasibly translate over to Yu-Gi-Oh! In their like sort of competitive like framing for their tournaments, and like what things you think could work and maybe couldn't work based on like what the differences are in
I think the way you qualify for Worlds and Runeterra is very good. I don't know if Josh agrees. I think that can be something that you could translate. You qualified for Worlds, right? Yeah. It's very easy. Like there's like three different things you can do.
It was 64 people from Europe, so yeah, it wasn't that easy, but it was feasible for anyone who seriously competed the entire season. It was just a natural. If you were good and you competed the entire season, you were gonna make it. Like there was no good player that played the game for a year who didn't make it. Let's phrase it that way. It wasn't easy to compete at the high level for the entire year, but if you did, you got there.
Yeah, that's what I was told anyway, because I started playing after this. But yeah, I was told that the system was very good, and I think the community liked it, right?
Yeah. I do think so. I mean, I didn't read that much. I didn't read anything negative about it, so I think people were just happy with it. I was happy with it. I mean, the way it worked was just Runeterra has YCSs essentially, called seasonals, every 2 to 3 months, where there's a set number of people qualify, 1,024 people qualify, and then they play 9 rounds down to a top 32 cut, and then it's like a 10K for first. Pretty good. It's a really good tournament, anyways, and it's all done in game. The entire client is in game. You don't have to go report your result to some other website or whatever. It's just all done in game automatically, which is great, by the way. Hearthstone never had that, and if Master Duel could get that, that would be great. Like even the pairings and everything are all made in game. And
Deck submission and all of that is all in game. You don't need to do anything. Like you can literally just you can play the whole thing on your bed in your phone.
I did. I played it on vacation once on my tablet, and it's perfect.
Is it one of the ones you 9-0'd?
Yeah.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Oh my god. Yeah. No, the game is like if the system is all done through the client, you can do stuff like what Josh does, which is really cool, right? Like.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And that seems like a really nice thing to have, where you can have it all within the one system. The one thing that I worry about with something like Master Duel is the fact that comparatively, like Runeterra was built from the ground up, like as an online, like everything was set initially like online. Whereas like Master Duel, so much of the stuff, all the cards and everything is ported over from what TCG is. All the stuff has already been established prior to that, and this is a new thing that they've set up within that IP. So would the system that they have in place currently, do you feel, would they be able to find a way to essentially run everything through the game, or do you think there'd be probably some major things that have to change in order for that to happen? Because right now I'd be struggling to see how they'd be able to be able to provide you pairings and stuff like that within the game itself. I don't know if there's anything you've thought about yourself, how they could go about doing those sort of things.
As long as there is an API, they should be able to give you pairings in game. That shouldn't be a problem.
You skip a lot of steps compared to the pairings in an actual YCS, right? There's not in Runeterra, they don't post the pairings somewhere and then you have to go find your opponent, right? It's just there's a tournament tab in the client and you just click on it, and when it shows you when the round starts, you check in. And then it just shows you your opponent and your.
There's a ready button.
Screen.
You press ready.
Ready, and then you play.
Yeah.
And I don't see why, unless they have some really bad programmers, I don't see why they wouldn't be able to program that into Master Duel.
It's not the hardest thing to do. It's very easy.
Instead of going instead of queuing you up into a ranked game, you just go to a tournament client and queue into your preset opponent once both are ready. I don't think this is not possible.
Sure.
This reminds me. I think this might be possible. I think there's a hint that we have in Master Duel that says it will be like this. Josh, you played the Xyz event. I don't think Chris and Cormac did. But did you know?
A little bit.
Okay, did you guys notice when you submit a deck for the Xyz event, it goes into a specific slot? If you already have a deck, it duplicates itself. It becomes an Xyz Festival deck. It becomes a different slot. That means that they have the system employed for the exhibitions, the festivals that they're going to do, which means they will probably also have it implemented for the tournaments. If you ever want to use a deck, you can just duplicate. It will just duplicate itself into the slot for that tournament. I think which is a good thing.
That basically is meant to be the idea for the decklist submission, and that's one of the things you'd be hoping that they would have in place. Perhaps maybe we don't give enough credit in this sort of thing that they're implementing, the 6E festival stuff. They're doing small things that show they're able to that they're able to take that information in. That would be equivalent to what they'd be doing if they're hosting the equivalent of a YCS within Master Duel. I don't know. Maybe these things set up. Yeah.
All of this is 100% possible. It's not the game client not being able to handle automatic pairing or whatever is that's not going to be the issue. It's just a matter of will they do it properly and what's their plan on doing this. Yeah, it's just we're going to have to wait and see. But yeah, other than that, coming back to this best of one thing, looking at all the other games, all of their rankings, ladders, whatever,
best of one,
all best of one, all of their tournaments is different decks best of ones. Yu-Gi-Oh, I think alongside Magic is the only big card game that has a side deck. And if you would have proposed to me like 3 years ago, what do you think about best of ones with different decks in Yu-Gi-Oh? I would have probably said impossible, because I've been playing the game for like already like I don't know how long at this point, and I was just used to best of ones. But having played in these other games now for a very decent period of time, competing at also a decent level, I think it's just different, not worse. And I think people are just always a little bit opposed to change, because it'll have to make people will have to rethink, right? You can't just jam the same 40 cards Eldritch deck that you would bring to a TCG tournament, right? And just expect to do as well in the best of one format, different environment, different rules. And yeah, it's going to be work strategically. You're going to have to, figure out which decks work together, which don't. How do you build a deck for best of one without being able to side deck for your bad matchups, right? Do you still play full-on combo, knowing that in best of one you don't have any way to come back if you go second, or if you brick? Will mid-range be the best way, which is like kind of the little bit of best of both worlds? Will you play a trap deck, which auto loses if you go second, so on and so forth? There's a lot of very interesting decisions to be made when preparing a deck/lineup for this sort of format, which I think will make it, after all, still
fun.
A very good format.
Fun and competitive.
It's going to be
Definitely.
a good format, and it's so I'm hopeful for it.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the competitive player base for Master Duel. The game is bigger than the TCG already. People are gonna want to be competitive at some point when we get the opportunity. So I think it's fine. The Xyz Festival, by the way, is a gem shower. If you haven't gotten on that, go on it. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's like 5,000 gems or something if you finish the whole thing with the quests.
Said 4.5 yesterday, yeah. Might be 5k even.
I think that's also really cool, by the way, because I think a lot of people expected Master Duel to be pay to win, and it's not like that.
I'm a Dino player. It is pay to win. What do you mean?
Yeah, sure, you're playing a wrong deck then.
I'm not that sure.
Bro, it's the best deck.
Is it more like pay to win sometimes?
No, it's pay to win all the times. Josh, what is this? I need to teach you Dino. You don't understand. You haven't played this deck. You weren't around when it existed. It's so good. It's so
Don't spend
good.
your gems on.
I feel like I've heard
on
this
that deck,
like
for sure.
attempting to convince people about Dino so many times over the past like year and a half.
Yeah, because we keep having to do it because it's the best deck
True.
by far.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
even close. Bro, your Tri-Brigade deck cannot win. My win rate through Maxi going second is 100%. It's ridiculous. I mean, okay, that also is another thing. Blind second is underrated in this game. People don't talk about that.
I mentioned that a couple times already on stream.
Yeah, like even if you don't think Dino is like all that, blinding second is still like a very underdeveloped thing in this game. I think it's very interesting, and I think it's cool that you could just like get Maxi, then you're like, okay, you're dead. Next.
It comes with the with a few things, but in like blinding second has been a thing in the TCG in couple different formats, right? Where people have been doing it. I think there's a few reasons why people haven't figured it out in Master Duel yet. The number one thing is that a lot of the cards that you need for going second are not very high priority when you start the game and build your collection. Like, I wouldn't say that stuff like Lightning Storm should be your first craft, right?
It was my first craft.
Fair enough. But
Destined to play Dino. Anyway, yeah.
for everyone else, I don't think stuff like that should be. And there's more stuff like even Evenly, I think, is a great card in Master Duel potentially if you go second, if you don't plan to kill them. But the thing is, at this point, the game's not been out long enough for people to just have all these cards, because I think there's other cards that you craft first, right? Most of the time. And it's going to take a while for people to grind to get all these cards and to try out different things. Like, I'm in the same position, right? I made a couple of decks when the game came out, and now I'm just kind of waiting until I can build more stuff. And eventually I'm going to have all the staples. I can take care of building different archetypes and trying out whatever I want, right? Which at this point I can't do that yet because I'd feel stupid crafting. I don't know, I really want to play Spiral or Salamangreat, but I feel stupid doing it while I don't even have like all the hand traps, or I don't even have lightning storms or whatever.
You wanna play Salamangreat? Do you hate yourself?
No, I like Salamangreat.
Okay.
I don't think it's good. I mean, I don't think it's that good. I just think it's enjoyable. Man.
Just like Palio. I see. Yes.
Oh, Paleo is broken, dude.
I did craft it for the Xyz Festival, and I'm having a lot of fun. The deck is amazing.
It's so good in the Xyz Festival. Yeah, it's great.
It is one of my favorite decks.
Okay, back to going second. I think first of all, some people just can't really do it right now because they're missing some of the cards. But also, people don't realize how good it gets when we're talking best of one. Where in a best of 3 setting, right? Imagine playing a deck that is purely built to go second. If you win game 1 and your opponent gets to the side, siding becomes really difficult. And because you don't know whether they're going to make you start because they know you want to go second and so on and so forth. There's a lot of mind games to be had. There's a lot of risk in this.
There is.
In a best of 1, when everyone currently, every meta deck just wants to go first, there's no risk involved. Your deck.
You can't lose the die roll. It's impossible.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You can't lose the die roll, and if you build your deck accordingly, I think there's a lot of stuff you can do on ladder, or maybe even for tournaments if it keeps best of 1 with different decks, with going second.
Yeah, this is the point that I was saying, like in a similar point to what you're on about there, where like when the Japanese YCSs were all best of 1s, you would see decks that in a best of 3 format would be much less likely.
Oh yeah, that'd be terrible.
To be able to win YCSs, but they gain a buff off of being able to take advantage of the best of 1, and massive.
Yeah, like didn't like Cyber Dragon win the very first Japanese best of 1 YCS or something?
It won one of them. I don't know if it was the very first, but it definitely won one of them. And it was a very weird list too.
Mm-hmm.
But it just goes second, and it abuses the format. Like that's why it works. But yeah, no, I definitely agree. The game is too young. People will need time. At some point, actually, I haven't seen people mention this, but at some point we should get something like what we have in Runeterra AR, for example. We should have something like that for Master Duel at some point, right? Where we get like a database of matchups.
So yeah, okay. Just for context, for the other two, Runeterra AR, it's possible. Riot offers an API for people to just request data from past games, right? And so there's been websites developed where you can just look up what everyone has been playing, which are the most popular decks, what cards people do. You can even like at some point there was software to just
deck tracker.
Enter the name of no, there was like software that you would queue into someone on ladder and they could literally enter your name into the software and it would tell them what deck you played in the last game. So they would technically, if you queued up the same deck, they would know what you're playing.
So kind of similar to Radioscope, right?
Yes, but it doesn't take like 30 years to load.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, this stuff like this has pros and cons, right? Data being available is very good. Data being available in real time while you're playing the person, I don't think that's a great thing. Where you never know whether your opponent just randomly knows your deck list or not. But that's a whole different topic. I don't know if Konami is going to be that open with their API. Just from a gut feeling, I'd say probably not gonna happen in that same
capacity.
I just from a gut feeling, I think Konami would be less open to like random developers accessing their data than Riot is, but that might be wrong here, but yeah.
That's probably based off of like our historical view of Konami, which is like generally that they're very like closed in that sort of regard. They don't really want to they're usually not good at like engagement with people either. They've been a bit better with that now though, so we can hope that maybe something like that can come in the future, but I think like for now it would be like we hope that happens rather than expecting it at this stage, right?
Yeah, I mean even if they don't release it to random developers, they will still like probably use it to like decide what to hit on the ban lists, for example, which is very interesting because they never did that in the TCG. The TCG was always to just like you need to observe the scene and decide, whereas now in Master Duel you can use like actual data to make your hits, which is interesting. It might lead to some very weird hits. Drill Warrior Vespinato is gonna get like banned next format because it has like a 100% win rate or something.
I'm sure they have like something like internal thing, like you're saying there, where they're able to track this stuff, because it would just I feel like it would make no sense not to, just giving you free information for, what you can do in the future. Mm-hmm. It's just whether they want to like open that up to like the wider audience, like I feel like we'll get situations where like if they are like hosting tournaments and then they have like a stream going on for it, they can like give you a statistic of like how many people who enter this tournament are playing like X card within their deck, or all this sort of stuff. Here's the win rate that we've like seen in the last tournament with X matchup versus Y matchup, but will they give that to all of us rather than just being like a tidbit on a stream or whatever? I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, I'd imagine they have something like this in place because like you were saying, like the whole like decision making process for like ban lists and stuff like that, like from TCG was very much sort of like observing what's going on, seeing what's doing well, like high level tournaments like YCS and stuff. Whereas here you have much more like data that you can call upon and like much more like hard actual facts as opposed to you know
even if they won't open it up to like any free developer, I would hope that they at least publish some of it from their end, just like here's the most popular decks, or here's the decks with the highest.
That should happen
whatever.
to some extent.
I hope so.
To some
mean,
extent.
We don't have any. We don't know. We don't have anything to go off here.
Yeah, we don't.
But it would make sense, and I hope so.
Yeah. I feel like it's one of those things where like they could give you that like bit of info that goes on like their social channels, being like this was the top 5 most played decks from our like last tournament or whatever. But I wonder if that's kind of like the limit that we get for it, which is still better than nothing. But those are the sort of things you can see happening.
Yeah, and then everyone can go there and be like, "Yo, this deck's the most played. Please ban it. I hate Konami." That's important.
Yeah. All right. We are almost at 1 hour. This was really good conversation. I actually think we discussed a lot of stuff that we haven't discussed before. Is there anything you guys want to say before we wrap up? Any plugs? Anything? Just go.
Yeah, just shout out to my team, Luxury Gaming. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, best team in the world, guys. Definitely, because Christian is in it. Josh, you started streaming. You're gonna be streaming today, right? Well,
Yeah,
they
I'm
won't.
streaming the tournament.
Are you streaming next Tuesday? Because that would be today for when this comes up.
Yes, I am.
Okay, he is streaming today, guys. When this goes up, he's probably either done with the stream or live. So go check his chat. But yeah.
We'll leave a link below for that. And just to mention the stuff for ourselves, we have noticed that like I think 80% of our viewers
Yes!
are subscribed.
Yes!
So if you are watching this on YouTube, please subscribe, because
Please
like,
subscribe.
the numbers are a bit ridiculous. I'll be honest with you guys,
Bro,
So-
it's like 10% of our viewers are subscribed at the moment. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway,
yeah.
should have said this in the beginning. I really forgot. My bad. But yeah.
It's chill. It's all good. If you're listening on whatever, like Spotify, whatever podcast platforms, all that, maybe come on YouTube. Maybe just give us a subscribe as well. Potentially, we'll see. We'll have a lot of content out over the next couple of weeks. We've had a good.
We are
this week already.
uploading a lot nowadays. Yeah, we are actually doing a lot of content. But yeah. All right. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you guys enjoyed. And yeah, we'll see you next week. I don't know who's gonna be on next week, but next week. See you guys.